Welcome to After 5 Radio. Queer in conversation with our artists in the diaspora.
After 5 Radio.
Olonga, thank you so much for joining us right here on After 5 Radio.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. It is actually an honor, by the way. You're like, oh my gosh, I used to watch you a long time ago coming for cricket. And today I get to sit down with you and I'm like, wow, what a huge honor. It is so exciting.
Well, that's fun. I just don't like the way you said a long time ago.
I know, right?
Well, if you think about it, it's been 20 years since I left Zimbabwe, and it's also been crumbs. What is it now? 28 years since I made my cricket debut. So it's been a while.
It's been a while. Even when I was doing my research, I was like, wow. Oh, yeah, it has actually been a while. But no, nonetheless, it's still a good while, or a good few moons ago.
Yeah, no, it's been a while. Well, nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
No, that's awesome. And so just to, introduce you to our viewers and listeners today, let me just say welcome to After 5 Radio, your favorite online radio station showcasing Zimbabweans in the diaspora. I am your host, aka the Hype Lady, Miss ThandoAmy, coming to you live all the way from Canada. And today, joining me is the multi-talented, you probably already hear us talking about cricket, but not only is he famously known for cricket, we're yet to learn a whole lot more about him beyond just cricket. Mr. Henry Olonga, mind bringing our listeners up to speed with just a little bit about your background before you even got into cricket, your upbringing, and all that fun stuff?
Okay, well, I was born in Zambia, in Lusaka, in 1976. So I'm 47 this year. I was born into a family of medical people. So my dad was a doctor. He was a pediatrician. My mom was a nurse. They met in the hospital. And then my dad took the family. I have an older brother called Victor, by the way. Many people know him from the world of rugby.
Right.
So he and I then, when I say he and I mean my brother Victor, my mom and dad moved to Kenya, where my mom then discovered that my dad had another family, but he hadn't mentioned this.
Right.
And this was a bolt from the blue for her. So unfortunately, that led to her going back to Zimbabwe, where she was from.
Yeah.
And the marriage fell apart. My mom moved on, met someone else. My dad, same thing. So I've got a stepmom on my dad's side called Judith. And from them, I got a half brother called Lionel. I then had a half sister called Veronica on my mom's side. Anyway, from a young age, I got sent off to boarding school. I went to a school called Reps initially. In fact, when I was in Bulawayo, I went to a couple of schools. I went to a school called Greenfield initially.
Right.
And then I went to a school called Tennyson. Then eventually, at the age of 8, I started boarding school at Rhodes Estate Preparatory School. And that's really where I got the foundation in my life for so many things that I've enjoyed, not only the sport, not only, drama and music, but other things that have interested me in my life, like art, etc. In any case, I then went on from Reps to Plumtree High School. And that's really where a lot of things that have really shaped my life were founded. So I fell in love with athletics there. And I also spurred on my love for music and also cricket and many other things. So Plumtree High School was very important in my development. Of course, I was lucky enough to go at a time when it was a very strong sporting school. We had a specific headmaster called Mr. Wiley, who was big into his sport, and he was always pushing us on the sports field, also culturally, and also to do with recreation. So there was a big push in the school. I ended up being head boy of the school in 94, just before I left school. So, I basically went through the education system in Zimbabwe when, it was a very different world back then. Still had punishment, prefects, and the head boy had
I
They,
know. Talk about
you
even
remember?
prefects, yeah. And funny enough, when you talk about prefects here in, I guess maybe I could say North America, they have no clue what the
Mm,
education system looks like, right? But yeah.
yeah. So it was fun. It was fun. And ultimately that, was the groundwork that was laid to
Mm.
lead me into becoming an international cricketer.
Oh, nice. So Plumtree actually had cricket. Is that what you're saying?
We had a lot of sports. We
Right.
had, in
Yeah.
fact, my first love initially, I think, was athletics. So
Athletics. Yeah.
I actually went to Plumtree not only because my older brother was there, but also because there was an athletics coach called Atherton Squire
Mm.
who who'd seen me play in a rugby match. He'd coached an under 13 side to come to reps when I was in my last year, and I think I scored a try or something. And he saw that I was really quick, and
Right.
and he'd gone to South Africa. He'd obviously qualified as a teacher, but also as an athletics coach. And he was a good runner as well. He was into triathlon,
Oh, nice.
swimming, which is swimming, running,
Hmm.
and cycling. And uh, he and another couple of good teachers there. There was a guy called Laurie Allenthwaite. He was into athletics and triathlon and a few others. And they basically, he didn't get me a scholarship to Plumtree, but he really wanted me to come to Plumtree. And so
Mm.
that was one of the reasons I went to Plumtree. And he took me under his wing. He was a fantastic coach, and he went
Mm.
on to do really well at Plumtree. We started winning things
Mm.
at interprovincial, inter-schools competitions.
Mm.
We started being very competitive. And then,
Mm.
unfortunately, at the age of 16, he left. He went to the
Oh.
capital city. He went to a school called St. John's. So he was headhunted.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, in a sense, he was a mentor to me, and I lost him. But
Oh.
what happened next was my cricket coach, a man called Roy Jones, then took me under his wing and, if you will, nurtured my very raw talent and gave me a dream. He sat me down one day towards
Mm.
the end of my schooling, and he told me that he felt that I could be the first black player to play cricket for Zimbabwe.
Oh,
But back
wow.
to your earlier question, Plumtree and reps as well. We played all sport. So in the first term it was track and field, it was swimming, um, and it was cricket, and then we played rugby and soccer in the winter, and then in the third term it was back to swimming and cricket.
Mm.
And some people played basketball and a few other sports. We also played hockey in the winter and a few others. But ultimately, my sports were athletics,
Hmm.
cricket, and rugby. Those are
Right.
the sports I played. Now, not a lot of schools were able to enable people to play cricket. It was a very, I don't want to say elite sport, but it was,
Mm.
if your school wasn't involved in cricket, you weren't going to play cricket because
That's
we
it.
didn't have the strongest club system in Zimbabwe. So back in the day, someone like me who was, in his early teens in the 90s, really needed to go to a school that offered the sport to be
Mm.
able to progress to the national side.
Right. Which actually, because the reason why I was asking is, I also had the opportunity to come to Plumtree, playing
No
basketball.
way.
Yeah, play not as in learning, but as in with basketball, right? So I was like, and some of the sports that we used to have back in H Town, because I went to JZ, so it was like those, type of schools, JZ, Plumtree, Collingbourne, and
Mm.
all those schools would come
Now,
together.
forgive my ignorance, JZ stood for?
Trust me, every time I say that, people are like, oh, okay, where is JZ? Let me tell you right now, my mom doesn't even know where JZ is. I'll tell you right now as we're speaking. She's never been there. I
That,
didn't
that's
know.
the name. The name is JZ. It's not an abbreviation. It's not an
It is an
acronym.
abbreviation. I'm yet to tell
Right.
you. And the
Oh,
abbreviation.
okay. Right.
And I will say it the way they say it.
Sure.
But so they call it Jason Zia Papa Moyo High School. I know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's Jason Moyo.
JZ is a lot easier.
There you go, Jay-Z. We're good.
Yeah.
So it was honestly, it was also a different transition coming from Queen Elizabeth going
Mm.
to, like the Bundu Bundu, right? But then again, it was more sport oriented, right? We would go for trips. That's where I got to do a whole lot of sports. I became the sports captain as well, right, for the school.
Nice.
So it's one of those where when you tell me Plumtree, yeah, I've been to Plumtree. Because sport made me travel as well. It was a good experience. So I can totally relate with a bit of your journey. But then talking about cricket being a prestigious sport, which was like hockey, right? I also used to play hockey, but some of coming from QE going to JZ, they didn't have field hockey, so it's some of the things that you had to figure out. So I was like, okay, so did Plumtree have cricket? It being a prestigious sport, and knowing back then people used to get scholarships for sports like cricket. Look at Tatenda Taibu and like the other squads and stuff. Like Churchill used to play a lot of they used to say buy a lot, but what do you call it? Give scholarships, right, for stuff like that, which is so amazing. And thank you so much for walking us through your upbringing. So how would your family and friends describe you if we're to ask them?
So incidentally, my sister Veronica went to Queen Elizabeth for a few years. Yeah, it's a long time ago, of course. But anyway,
when we're talking about how many moons are going, you're like, you were prefect in 94. I was grade 1 in 94.
Wow.
When you're talking, I was like, wow.
Well, everyone's got to get old at some point,
That's it. No, it's fun stuff anyway. Like,
that's real.
Yeah.
So when you say my family, do you mean the family I'm with now, as in my wife and kids, or do you mean the family I grew up in?
Both. Who would consider you the notorious, mischievous, witty, goofy, or both?
Okay, so I used to, like, when I was young, I used to get on well. I used to get on well with my brother. I think that's Victor. I've got lots of brothers, but that's another story for another time. But anyway,
and what's funny though, a lot of people actually know about Victor, because today's questions are not mine. Just so you know, everybody's just so excited. Like, please ask Henry this. Please ask it. So these are not my questions.
So no, that's fine. So I don't know how Victor would describe me. When we were young, we got along. Like kids, we used to play together a lot. And then there came a time when I think maybe politically we just shifted and changed, and we saw the world differently.
Yeah.
So from the age of about 16, I became a Christian. And
nice.
Now, no disrespect to Victor, but Victor was he used to live life, if you know what I mean. So, so from that, we started butting heads, and then of course later on, I think politically we also came from different spectrums, and different sides of the fence, if you will. So that, I don't know how he would describe me. I think Victor, Victor has his own. Let me start by saying Victor was very talented in what he did. His gifting was he could run fast as well. He was very good in rugby. He was a little hot-headed. It's just the way he is. He speaks his mind, which is great, and I do to some degree. But I think he would describe me as a little more mellow. I think, if he was comparing me to him, I think that's what he'd say.
Okay.
I reckon he would. He'd recognize that, I have done a lot of things in my life. So, I stepped into areas he might not have stepped into, like music and art. So we're very different in that way. But I don't know. I hope at this stage of my life, now that I'm 47 and he's 49, he'd say nice things. I hope. as far as my parents go, I don't know. I think, and my other siblings, I think they describe me as a guy who kind of sticks to himself. I'm very much a loner, very much an introvert, and of course I know that about myself. I think they would say the same thing. So I wasn't into. There were a lot of things I wasn't into when I was growing up. I was very focused in what I wanted out of life. I was very creative, and I think my present family, my wife and kids, I think they would say the same thing. I'm very. My wife calls me not so professory. That's her like nickname for. That's how she's programmed me in her phone. because I'm always experimenting. I'm always trying something new, and I'm always, yeah, just trying to push the boundaries in what I
That's
can
it.
try.
Yeah.
My kids. I think your kids, you'll never win your kids over. They always think your jokes are terrible. So I love telling lots of dad jokes. Like really, they
I
think they
see.
think my singing style is rubbish. They think I should get more modern.
Oh my
Um,
God.
but I must say, my daughters. So I got two daughters, Talika and Liana. So my youngest
Yeah.
is 11, and my eldest will turn 13 in December, at the end of December. So at this point in time, daddy's not that cool, but maybe in 10 years' time, when they look back, maybe daddy wasn't so bad.
I hope they're listening right now, and hopefully, they will actually understand what you mean, or what you still mean to the Zimbabwean nation up until now. Be it,
No chance. No chance.
are you
No
kidding
chance.
me? Oh
No.
my God. Well,
I
like,
think I think they know some of my story, but I
okay,
don't think yeah, I don't know that your kids ever get it when they're young.
no, they don't.
So they know I played international cricket.
Yeah,
They know I did this protest way back when, but they don't have context. They've grown up in
yeah.
England and they've grown up here in Australia,
Mm,
and very sheltered existence,
mm,
very easy life
mm,
relatively compared
mm.
to, I think, if they've grown up in Zimbabwe. We'd have probably sent them off to a bush school because they're so soft, just to teach them a lesson. You know
I
what I mean?
know. Yeah,
They
yeah.
never put things back when they've taken it from somewhere.
That's it.
Their room's always untidy. The
You know
whole
you're gonna be in trouble, right? Because they're listening to you say all
uh,
of this.
there's no ways my kids will listen to something like this. It's too boring, man. They'll be like, I want to go on TikTok and watch some videos. There's no ways.
Oh my God,
So
that is so hilarious. Yeah.
so yeah. I think obviously my wife's much more mature than my kids. So I think
Of course.
she's got a quiet admiration for my life and what I've done and what I've achieved. Not that
Mm.
I've achieved a ton, but on the other hand, she is a wife. So she's I don't know. You'd have to ask her what she thinks about me, but I'm always being told that the dishes need to be done, and the laundry hasn't been done.
Oh
So,
dear. Yes.
and you got to remember, I'm the only male in this family, so I'm always copying it. But I think my wife knows that I can fix things when they get broken. So we got
Right. So that's at least that's a bonus. That's a plus.
yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
hope so. I hope so. So that's a weird question. Not many people ask me that question, but I hope I've kind of given you some insight.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of that's an interesting one too, right? So every time I always like to bring that up and hear at least maybe you've heard a thing or two, because I know some people when they write on their socials, oh yeah, they write a bio and they say, oh, at least that's what other people say, or that's what other people think. I'm like, oh, okay, no, it's what you think. But no, that is awesome. Thank you so much for that. You also, when you're doing your intro, talking about, your background and stuff, you mentioned like, having moved to Zambia and then finding out about the other family that your dad had. And as a man, how did it, now that you're grown, I am so for men's mental health, healing, childhood trauma, and stuff like that. Did it ever affect you in any way to say, ooh, okay, like, and then having to have a stepdad, was it a good environment? And, how did that shape you as a man, and then getting into cricket, a men's sport as well? And you guys looked like a loving team. Like you guys had like that one love, seeing the Zimbabwean team back then. So
That's what it looked like. And that's what it looked
I
like.
heard, yeah, I heard there was a little bit of controversy and politics, but we'll get into that.
Sure. Um, I don't want to give you the wrong impression,
Mhm.
but back to your question. Look, I think first of all, I only discovered that my dad had this other family much later in life. I think I was 27-ish when I discovered this. So it was one of those things that wasn't really discussed in the family. Um, I don't want to be stereotypical, but you know what African families can be like. It's just it didn't come up in COVID. We didn't discuss it. But and I would ask pointed questions as a young boy. I'd ask my mom, why did you and my dad split up? And it was she'd give this reason or that reason, but it was never the reason. But obviously, much later on in life, it all came out because ultimately, when I went to so when Tara and I got married, my wife's name's Tara. When we got married here in Adelaide, and she's an Australian, and we also got married in Nairobi. When I say married, I mean the official wedding was here, but we wanted the African side of my family to at least enjoy some kind of celebration with us. So we basically reenacted the whole thing, and it was while we were there that it all came out, and it was the funniest thing, ThandoAmy, because my stepmom was there, my biological mom was there, and the first wife was there. All of them were there. So you can imagine. My mom hadn't been back to Kenya since it had all happened, and she'd left in a bit of distress. So I found out because one of my brothers, half brothers, and by the way, there were 10 in total from the previous marriage. Never came up in conversation with my mom, but one of the guys came up to me and he said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No, I have no idea. I was new to the country. I played cricket there once or twice, but I didn't know anyone who was a relative. And so I assumed he might be a distant relation." But he then said, "I'm your brother." I said, "What? What do you mean you're my brother?" He said, "Yeah, your dad and my dad are the same dad." I was like, "Pardon?" Well, this needs explaining. So later on, when I went to the hotel, I spoke to my mom. I said, "What in the world?" And so she filled us in. So anyway, so that's how it all came out. And then, subsequently, I've discovered that my family is much larger than I initially thought,
Right.
including the 10 I've mentioned.
Oh my
But
God.
I won't go there. I won't go there
Right.
with respect to my dad. But long story short, my dad, he's fathered a lot of kids. And I think because I didn't know for a long time, all I knew as a kid was I was growing up in a broken home. My parents were split up, and I got sent off to boarding school. So from my perspective, I just immersed myself in boarding school. It was my new home. I made lots of friends over there. I was too busy, if you will, to be depressed or whatever.
That's
But I
it.
think, I think as a young boy, and I write about this in my audiobook. As a young boy, I was kind of withdrawn and quiet and sad. And the teachers even noticed this. But long story short, as an older man, did it affect my mental health? I don't know. What I know is I'm the kind of guy that just gets on with it. So it didn't really get me down. It was another crisis, if you will, if you want to call it that I just had to deal with. And it was a happy time. I was getting married. Everyone was there having a good time. So I didn't really focus on it. It was only later on I started digging a little bit, and it all came out. But and I'm very honest about this. I've got a lot of respect for my dad. He had tremendous challenges in his life. He was disabled, and he worked through the stigma of being born at a time when disability, didn't give a lot of people access. He became a doctor, and he gave me a great education. He was very supportive of my cricket, when I think a lot of African fathers would have rather their child goes into education, goes to university, etc. And he still wanted that for me. But he still, he supported me. He bought kit from the UK, which was very expensive at the time. He sent me on educational trips. He sent me on cricket tours. So he was very supportive. So I've got a lot of respect for my dad, but there's one area of his life that he never quite was disciplined in, and that was
in that area of his life.
yeah, let me just leave it at that. You know what I'm saying?
But you turned out okay. Like you turned out okay right now, and
Sure. Now, but the thing is, I don't know how the other kids turned out. It's not like I keep in touch with them. I don't really know them. And I'm sure. Look, I'm sure if you sit down with a psychologist or a therapist and you go through it all, I'm sure there's a knock-on effect. You know what I mean? I think it's much. Studies will show that it's much more beneficial for a child to grow up in a stable home with both parents, etc. And I never experienced that. I never let it hold me back. I dealt with the hand that life, dealt me, and I just got on with it. But would I be a better person today for it? I don't know.
Right.
But I'm not a sad person. I live my life to the full. I enjoy my life. So I looking back, I can't say I'm constantly. I can't say I've got this this long list of deficiencies that have led to me being poorer in my life, if that makes sense.
Right.
I don't have anything to blame. I can't say, well, I didn't turn out okay because my dad this or my mom this. I'm
Yeah.
not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy. I've
But
just
then
got on
again,
with my life.
But then again, I believe just the environment that we grew up into, to be honest, like as in the country that we come from, right? It kind of didn't give us room to, look at all these things. And you also mentioned something really profound where our parents would just say something vague for you not to know, understand, not get deeper, not ask so many questions. That's how they protected us. That's how they protected us as
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And saying, Kuti, you know what? This is none of your business. It's adult business. Just be a kid. As long as you're getting everything, as long as you're, living your best life. I feel honestly, our culture wasn't so bad. Come to think of it.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. I'm not
Yeah.
complaining at all. And the thing is, I think wherever you live, you're gonna have challenges. So you come over here to the West, and kids they got no discipline. They're soft. They yell at their parents. There's just so many.
I know.
There's so many. You know what I'm saying? It's like
I know.
so on the other hand, when I was growing up in Plumtree, the other extreme, we got bullied.
Yeah.
And bullying was a thing back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't. It was just accepted. It was a rite of passage. That's what happened. That's how you grew up. If from being a little boy or little girl, you turned into a young man or woman. You had tough times. The prefects would tell you to go and face the wall for 2 hours, or run around the field at 4 in the morning or whatever.
Sad.
But I look back and I think, man, it toughened me up,
Yeah.
because it's given me resilience. It's given me tenacity. I don't just give up easily on stuff. I learned some valuable lessons. I think the West has got a lot to give Africa, and Africa's got a lot to give to the West. So I've got no problem with how tough sometimes life in Zimbabwe was, as far as my education was, because there's some tough times, but yeah, I think it's all part of the package in turning you into someone who's got a bit of metal to you. You got a bit of something, a bit of get up and go. You got some va va voom. You don't just fall over when the challenges of life come.
That's it. That's it. That is awesome. And those who are actually tuning in and joining us right now, thank you so much for tuning in. I see Bruce, who's now based in the States, used to be in Canada, saying, I like the conversation, so profound. Thank you so much, Bruce. And, those who are just tuning in, we're just hanging out with the multi-talented former Zimbabwean cricket player, but he's not only known for cricket, he's known for a whole lot of things, because he got onto The Voice, by the way. We're going to get into that. And you already know that, when he was still in Zim, or were you in Zim when you produced Our Zimbabwe? Were you still in Zim, or you had left then?
No, I sure was. It was
Right.
2001. I think I'd returned from an India tour. We'd gone as a team to India. We'd done a tour over there. I think, look, I'm 47, so my memory's a bit sketchy, but
Okay.
I think it wasn't a great tour. India was always a tough tour. They had some amazing players. The conditions in India were very challenging for someone like me. I was a fast bowler, so the wickets weren't really supportive to my style of bowling. So I struggled a little. I'm not the only one to struggle bowling in India as a fast bowler.
Right.
But I think it was a tough tour. But one of the things that struck me when we were on that tour, and by the way, it was also in the middle of a lot of the political turmoil of the late 90s, early 2000s. And I got back to Zim, and I was living with a guy called Bruce. Bruce Izzet, a guy called Andrew Baird, and another guy called Chris Izzet, I think. Bruce's brother. I think he was with us at the time. In any case, I was attending a church called Hear the Word. I think it's now called Celebration Church or something like that. It's a big church. In Harare. It's like on the it's near the race course, I think, on the way to Borodale. Anyway, so while I was there, one of the things that struck me when I moved in with the guys, because I used to live in Bulawayo and I used to train there. I was part of Metabilaland. I was part of the cricket team there with Heath Streak, who we sadly lost only a few months ago.
Yeah.
Also, John Rennie, Mpumelelo Mbangwa, Ethan Dube, and a few others. You know,
wow, yeah.
Well, people know him as Pommy Mbangwa now, but so I used to play for Metabilaland, and then I moved to the capital to just position myself better, because you know all the training was up in the capital, and so and as well, I also started dating a young lady who happened to live in Harare, so it made no sense for me to stay in Bulawayo. Anyway, cutting a long story short, I was now living with these guys, and they were amazing musicians. All of them played, and Andrew had produced some music for Hear the Word, which is a celebration center, and long story short, I came home and I was like, you know, guys, that tour was tough, but those Indians love their team, man. They love their country. They fly their flags. They have such passion when they support their team.
Yeah.
They are so patriotic, you know.
Yeah.
So I said to Andrew, let's write a song that tries to capture something of that patriotism. You love your country. You love your flag. You know, you're gonna make some kind of contribution to your country, that sort of thing. So we got together, and we, you know, he was and still is an amazing producer, Andrew. So I've even just finished a few projects with him recently, and he put together all the music, and he got me to sing, and we wrote the words together, the 3 or 4 of us that wrote the lyrics, and I think we really captured something in the midst of all the uncertainty that was in Zimbabwe at the time. So we wanted to speak, you know, I'm talking like, now I'm speaking like a church person, but we wanted to speak prophetically into the situation that was there, rather than just react to it. We wanted to proclaim something over the nation, that we were living in harmony, we were together, we were, you know, we had unity, we had peace, etc. And so, you know, if you look at the words of our Zimbabwe, you'll see that it's a song of hope. It's a patriotic song of hope, an anthem of sorts, that's trying to galvanize the people of Zimbabwe to look at the country as ours, you know, because at the time,
actually sang it well and passionately too, because even up until now, I always play it on air, by the way, just so you know. Even the moment that we lost the former captain, Mr. Heath Streak, may his soul continue to rest in peace. You know, you can feel the words, you can still feel them. And also considering that we're now out here, I'm like, what happened to our Zimbabwe? Like the actual, you know, the zim, you know, and when you listen to that, it's like, you guys were onto something. You were really onto something. And how people eventually wanted it to become the national anthem. But yeah, this is where the politics comes in. Right, the political side.
yeah.
Of things.
So the first thing I'll say is, not everyone loved the song initially.
Really?
Oh yeah. Zimbabweans can be funny, man. They can hate on you without cause. You know, like if you're different, like I'm going on a bit of a rabbit trail here, but if you're different, sometimes people just write you off just because you're different. Whereas in the West, people they celebrate different.
Yeah.
So strange things have happened to me in Zimbabwe, but this was one of them. So when we wrote the song, initially, there was a journalist called Leo Hatugari. I think he's late now. I don't know if he's still alive. But anyway, he was very critical of the song, and he used to write, if I'm not mistaken, for the independent newspapers. So he might have been like a daily daily news journalist or the Independent, one of those. I can't remember. But he was
But
very
definitely not the
scathing.
Herald.
I beg yours?
Definitely not the Herald, right?
No, not the Herald. Not the
Oh,
Herald. He was,
okay.
as far as I know, he was independent.
Mm,
But he read us wrong.
mm.
Because we wrote this land, our land, right? So initially people think, oh, he's talking about the land issue. Therefore, he
Mm.
must be supporting Mugabe.
Ooh.
So so I was like, pardon? So I looked at the newspaper and I thought, this is crazy. Because if you read the lyrics just as a neutral, I don't think you get the impression that I'm on any one side apart from Zimbabwean side.
Yeah.
Anyway, but Jonathan Moyo, then, who was the then Minister of Information, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
then loved it, because if those guys don't like it, then we like it. Because that's the way Zimbabwe works, man. If you're not with us, you're against us. So long story short, it then got a life of its own. It then got played on radio. I got invited to sing at the Miss Zimbabwe pageant. I got invited to sing at a ZANU PF conference, etc. So like my star was shining bright because of the song. But from a political perspective, I was fairly neutral in the song. But then, cutting a long story short, as things started to develop in the country, politically, as in the land redistribution program kicked in, farmers started to lose their farms, etc. Workers getting kicked off, all of that stuff led to me starting to question a whole lot of things I hadn't questioned. I was just a cricket player. I was playing for my country. I'd done this song, and I was traveling around the world. I was playing in World Cups, etc. And living the life. I was middle class. I'd done well enough to be able to settle in Zimbabwe. I was looking forward to a future in Zimbabwe. I was engaged to a Zimbabwean young lady. And long story short, my conscience just got pricked. I was just looking at what was happening in the country, people getting murdered, all that sort of stuff. Many people, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but some people remember those days with the Border Gezi youth and Chenjerai Hunsvi, and all of that stuff that was happening. It was a very unpleasant time to live in the country. And it was because people were being polarized. I haven't seen something like that until almost just recently, in the last few years. Certainly here in Australia, with the whole coronavirus thing, and the whole world went crazy, because if you didn't want to get vaccinated, people hated you. If you did want to get vaccinated, people hated you. It was like the world was so divided on this issue, and it was similar. It was similar to what was going on there. Some people were like, "Yeah, it's our land. We've got to take it back." Other people were like, "No, no, no. The farmers, they're good. They provide employment. They feed us. Blah blah blah." Anyway, from my perspective, I have to say this: I wasn't affected, because I could have just carried on playing cricket from the rest of my life until my cricket career came to an end. I could have kept my head down, and I probably would have enjoyed a pretty decent life, to be totally honest. But I decided, for some stupid reason, to mouth off. Maybe it's an Olonga thing. my brother had mouthed off a little bit earlier, and he lost his career because he got banned because he was complaining about stuff.
Right.
And now his motivations were different, but from my perspective, like as a man of God, it was just so much wrong with what was going on in Zimbabwe. As a believer, I just felt, nah, this is crazy that we're fighting each other like this. And I mean, the history probably goes back to the late 90s, right? So 98, some people remember the referendum. We voted overwhelmingly no, and the constitution wasn't changed. But Mugabe, back in the day, he was not happy with that. And then, of course, the rest is history. The war veterans, etc., etc. I remember when we were in the West Indies, we were playing against the West Indies in a series, and we got word that Martin Olds, who was a white farmer in, I believe, the Matabeleland area, got murdered. And the images were broadcast all over the world of his dog sitting on top of him with a sheet over his dead body. And it struck something, man. You would have had to have a heart made of stone not to feel that there was something desperately wrong with that. That a man who was trying to defend his farm ended up murdered or killed, call it what you like. And then, of course, there are some people who will defend what happened back in the day to the death, and I'm not one of those people, and I think it was desperately wrong the way they went about it. But we live in a free world where people can choose whichever side of the fence they want to sit on. My side of the fence was, this has got to be challenged. This is wrong. And on top of that, Zimbabwe's an interesting place because, and it's probably hit me more that I've lived in England for 12 years and I've stayed here for about 7-8 years. It's probably struck me more how much more transparent the West can be in areas it needs to be. It's not totally transparent. Don't get me wrong. There's still some weird stuff that goes on where I go, there's something in this world that's being guided by unseen hands in the background. So I'm not suggesting the West is better than Zimbabwe or Africa. Each part of the world has its story. But one of the things that the West does very well is it generally keeps corruption under the lid, or they keep a lid on top of it.
That's exactly it. That's it.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting there isn't collusion and corruption between big companies and governments and big tech and all that sort of stuff. That's been happening for a long time, and we've seen it escalate in the last few years as well. There are big multinational forces at work that shape our world. Some of them even spiritual. But obviously, if you're not spiritual, you won't get what I'm saying. But my point is, the corruption was something else that really got to me in Zim. I tell a story. I tell a story in my book about how I was playing golf with a guy I played cricket with, and we were looking up we were playing at Borrowdale Brook golf course. I think it was called Sun River. I think been a long time. I think it was called Sun River, and there were these mansions that were being built on Sun River. By the way, is in a valley. It's in a very posh part of of Harare. It's Borrowdale Brook. It's very wealthy, very super elite. And on the hills, there were these villas. I can only call them villas being built. Beautiful views. You can imagine what kind of views they would have had over the golf course and over the beautiful valley. And so I remember asking some people, it might have been the caddies or someone, like, whose house is that? Oh, it's so and so from the army. I was like, what? Well, okay. I was wondering, like, where do these guys get this money from? Of course, we were involved in the DRC. There was millions of dollars going out and millions of dollars coming back through diamonds or mining concessions or whatever it was. But there were a lot of people making a lot of money through the war in the DRC, and it just made me mad because back home there were all these millions being made abroad and never being declared or going through the correct routes and getting to the country and fixing roads and making sure the hospitals work and making sure our education system's strong. All these things I'd already observed when I went abroad. Like I'd gone to Dubai to play cricket, Sharjah. We'd played cricket in Sharjah. Everything just works, man. Everyone is taken care of, man. It's just like the money that they make from oil or whatever it is, or tourism, goes back in, and you can see it. Everything's clean, it's neat, it's tidy, the maintenance is amazing. Same thing here, same thing in England to a large degree.
And with that, in countries like that, you'll never need anybody to be vocal or about anything. But then the corruption in Zim is unheard of. Like it's ridiculous because people like you, people like me, people like a lot of people were so outspoken You can't live in that country, right? Where sadly, it's our country. We love it, but at the same time, if you can see things that are literally in your face and cannot exercise your own rights, then what's the point of leaving, really?
Yeah, no, it's very sad. It's very sad because I think, excuse me, being held accountable was part of my life as a cricket player. You know, if I played badly, I got dropped.
That's it.
In other professions, if you do badly, you get flicked. But in Zim, you know, people could perform in politics anyway for decades, do a terrible job, still get back in, man. It's like, where's the accountability? Who keeps you honest? You know, so it's down to free thinkers and people who are brave enough to lift their heads up and say, this is not right, please stop. So like when Andy Flower and I did our protest in the World Cup of 2003,
which exactly we had to, I was holding on to this question, but go ahead. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So, and just commenting on that,
Point.
The Black Armband protest was 2003.
Right.
The song was released 2001. So there's a couple of years. Yeah. There's a big gap. So it wasn't that close together. In any case, the Black Armband protest was Andy Flower and myself attempting to be voices of reason in a country in which we felt it was getting harder and harder for independent voices to speak out without recrimination. You know, like if you call yourself a democracy, then you should be able to tolerate dissenting voices. You know, first of all, the media should be able to say, "Hey, what's going on here?" You know, and I remember back in the day when I was in Zim, there was only like the Daily News, and then if I'm not mistaken, their printing press got bombed. Then they had to print in South Africa. Then they got banned, and then a few years later they got unbanned. So, but generally, it was the government mouthpieces. It was the Herald, the Chronicle in Bulawayo, and maybe a couple of others, but they were mostly, you know, government run. Same with TV. You know, if you lived in Bulawayo, it was ZBC. That was it. Unless you got a satellite dish, then you could, then you could get DSTV. Then you can get MTV. You know, whatever it was, MTV and all the other TV stations that were broadcast on DSTV. You know, Mnet or whatever it was. I can't remember. Anyway, but it was hard for people to speak against the political agenda of the day without, man, I remember Morgan Tsvangirai having his skull fractured when they beat him up the one time. I remember Job Sikala. So we're talking people who are involved in politics here. Job Sikala, that brother is still being persecuted. But Job Sikala, they came to his house when early in the morning, the army, and they harassed him and his pregnant wife. I mean, it was terrible, man. They beat his souls, if I'm not mistaken. It was like they tortured an MP. And it was
you can do about it. Nothing.
I mean, all the power had been and has been with ZANU-PF.
Absolutely.
But I think wouldn't it be a better world for all the talk about liberation and independence and everything? Wouldn't it be a better world if the powers that be that were actually liberation war heroes actually passed on to their kids and their grandkids a world of opportunity, a world in which they possibly didn't enjoy? Because that's the thrill of being a parent. You sometimes try to give your kids opportunities you didn't get, but you do it out of love so that they can enjoy a better life than you experienced. Now, I'm not saying I had a bad life, but what I'm saying is, if you're the leaders of a nation and you've led them to independence, to me, the best thing you can do then, as fathers of the nation, mothers of the nation, whatever you may be, is to pass on to the next generation, you know, an extremely prosperous life that you didn't experience. You might get a taste of it, but you might be like Moses. You don't get to the promised land. You lead people close. But what's happened is some of those guys are going, nah, I'm 75, 80 years old, but it's my time now. It's my time. I want my mansion. I want my Benz. I want my Rolls Royce. I want my Gucci because it's my time. I didn't get it in the 60s and 70s. Now it's my time. So leave me alone. I want, you know?
The facts, though. Facts.
You know what I'm saying? So that's, to me, that's the saddest thing is like,
it was crazy. Up until now, I always say, I don't know, when people always tell me, they're like, you know what, Amanda, when I was younger, somebody who's watching right now, they said that to me. When I was younger, I never thought I'd go back to Zim, but right now, Zim is this, Zim is that, Zim is me. I'm thinking with the way I'm so vocal, with the way I can, I know corruption. I cannot stand corruption. I know corruption is everywhere, but I've also been behind bars for being vocal.
wow.
Yeah, for being vocal.
I did not know that.
You didn't. Nobody knows except for my family. Is it not my family? My family doesn't even know except for my brother and my cousins. And
Well, now they know.
now you know. But that's why with me, it's like I am so vocal to the point that tell me that this is not allowed. And like if it's not written to say don't do A, B, C, D, why are you putting me behind bars? Yet I am just being a civilian who's walking and trying to enjoy the festive season. And you know what happened? They said, oh yeah, you guys can go. This one is very vocal. Let her stay. And my brother begged them to say, because people at home, they're going to be asking, where is she? This is my little sister. Like my brother's older than me, right? So he had to beg them, right? So I cannot see myself. Even you saw the documentary that came out, the Gold, what do you call it? The one that was on
Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera, yeah.
The Gold Mafia, I think.
Gold Mafia. And I'm thinking, nah, I can't. I would be vocal about it. Like they would have killed me a long time ago. And I get you, especially when you're trying to stand up for something that's right.
Yeah, I think you're always going to be misunderstood. If you come against the status quo, I think most people like to have a comfortable life, and even if that that illusion of a good world is shattered in front of them, they're still not willing to wake up and go, okay, no, this what I'm looking at here looks like corruption. I mean, what's the saying? If it walks like a duck, smells like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You know what I mean?
It is what it is.
And so like, obviously, Robert Mugabe was in power for 37 years.
Yeah.
Like,
some of my friends passed away earlier before they could see the after. Yeah.
If you can be in power for 10 years, I think you're a dictator. I think.
You think these are your?
I think maybe because most countries give you 2 terms. Each term is like 4 years generally. Right?
Yeah.
But 37 years, like, brother, you're a dictator.
Yeah.
You can, and people have got a problem with me saying that, but like it walks like a duck. It you know what I'm saying? It's like that is what I think was the great tragedy of Zimbabwe. Was Robert Mugabe could have been a Mandela-like figure, to galvanize the nation, kept everything stable. We've had a lot of good leaders around the place. Namibia, they've had decent leaders. Botswana, I mean, how many dramas come out of Botswana? Do you know what I'm saying? But Zimbabwe is blessed, man. We've got the Victoria Falls, we've got Wange National Park, we've got not only tourism, man, we've got the Highlands, Eastern Highlands, beautiful. We've got such a rich heritage and culture, Zimbabwe ruins. We just have so much to offer the world, and yet here we were, like, at each other's throats, calling each other names. I know we're coming to the end of it, but I'll tell you something that made me really sad. Like, just to illustrate how I think Zimbabweans need a reset in the way they think. Like, so I've been in this country a number of years, and early on, my name was put forward to be on an advisory board
Oh, wow.
called the the advisory group on Australian and African relations. The
Mm,
advisory group on Australian and African relations, which is, the acronym is AGAR.
mhm,
So a lot of political thinkers in Australia, different fields. I was in the arts and sport, if you will, all getting together to try and get Africans to work closer with Australia. Um, Everything to gain, nothing to lose.
mm,
Anyway, I went across to Canberra, the capital city, where we were having this meeting, and there was a bit of stuff going on. We had, in fact, the one time we had Obasanjo coming along, and he was the keynote speaker, and it was quite an event. Anyway, the High Commissioner at the time, I don't think the current High Commissioner, but the one who was there in power at the time,
mm.
it was about 4 or 5 years ago, summoned me. He said, "Come over here, Olonga." By this stage, I'm not Zimbabwean anymore because, of course, I've become I'm a British citizen by this stage, but I'm still advocating for Africa, and I'm still, in a sense, putting a good word in for
Yeah,
Zimbabwe.
that's it. Yeah.
So he called me across and he said, "What's this I hear, Olonga, about you denigrating the government, Zimbabwe government?" I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because in England, yes. In the first 10 years, yes.
Yeah.
But after that, I just moved on, man. I moved on with my
Right.
life. I started
Yeah.
moving on into music,
Yeah.
the arts, into, I moved on. I'm now a dad, so I moved on into being a dad, and I just moved on. Like
Right.
that politics thing is like ancient history for me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like 20 years now. I did my thing. I took a stand. I got hated for it. I've moved on.
Life needs to go on.
Anyway, he then said to me, I said, "Oh, I don't think I'm denigrating the government." He said, "Why are you saying bad things about Mugabe?" Well, I said, "Well, I think he's still alive at the time, still in power." I said, "Well, he is. To be fair, he is a dictator." And then he was so offended at that. He got up in a huff and he said, "Okay, you can go now." He said, "You're not Zimbabwean anyway. You were born in Kenya,"
Facts.
which was incorrect, because I was born in Zambia. But I didn't think to correct him. I just let it slide, and I was like,
You're like, yeah, your facts are like.
but I let it go. But the thing is, ThandoAmy, that I've had that all my life, even in Zim, man.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that I played for the country. It didn't matter that I did a song for the country. It didn't matter that I did a stand for the country, did a protest, blah, blah, blah. I'm still like seen as some weird traitor. And the price I paid, people, they always try to undermine it and make it seem like it was less than it was.
Right.
And so there was a lesson I learned there, which is basically, in Zim, you're like, it's very polarized. I've got a lot of good friends from Zim across the color spectrum, racial divide, everything. I've got white friends, black friends, everything in between, coloreds. So, the derogatory name we used to go Goffle.
Yeah.
So no offense to any colors out there, but so
something else. Like, nobody will easily get offended. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, for real.
Offended.
So like but I had friends across the board. I went to school in integrated schools. I went to government schools. I didn't go to private school.
Yeah.
And I had a typical Zimbabwean upbringing. And yet, even after all of that, in some people's minds, I still wasn't good enough, because I wasn't indigenous enough, or patriotic enough, or I didn't support Mugabe enough, or whatever. People have always found a reason to hate on me. But
right.
I've been true to myself, true to my convictions, and my whole purpose of living now is obviously to give my kids a better life, but also to try and make the world a better place.
That's
now,
it.
if I can't do that in Zim, I'll do it wherever the good Lord puts me.
I'm
trying to do that. I'm trying to do that here in Australia.
Nice.
And who knows how many years I have left on this planet, but it's been a fun ride.
That is awesome. So just to because we're running out of time, and I know a lot of people, there's a part, some of the comments that I haven't put, regarding some of the questions that we had, but briefly, just the transition from earlier on, we spoke about cricket and us, we saw it as a loving team. We loved you guys, right? As in your era with, the late former captain Heath Streak, and there was Grant Flower and the Flower brothers. There was you, Mpumelelo, Mbanga, and that team. When at what point, like you say, you actually mentioned that it wasn't as it seemed. How? Because was it because, I don't know, was it color? Was it what? Like, I don't know. We thought you guys were
look, we got on okay for a number of years. We got on okay.
Yeah.
But let me just say this.
Mm.
ThandoAmy, I'm very bad at promoting things, but this is the perfect opportunity for me to tell people that if they want the full story, they got to read my audiobook.
Which we're definitely going to be talking about, and where to get it, and how is this, because it's all anyway.
Right. So I tell the whole story of my life, the whole story from birth all the way through to about 2012 when my youngest daughter was born. So I blow by blow, I talk about the incident that happened in the change room in Yorkshire in England, that really cascaded a chain of events into what became a racism inquiry. It takes me 2 or 3 chapters to explain exactly how we went from a harmonious team to a team that had factions and a team that had tensions. Now, I'm not. In all honesty, it's my take on the whole thing. There'll be other people who have a different view on this and how we got to where we did. But let me just say this: I don't want to take away from all the successes we had as a cricket team. We played in a couple of World Cups. We did tremendously well. We beat England in a few series. We beat India. We beat Pakistan in a series in '98. We achieved some great things as a cricket team. From when I first joined, '95, when we won our first Test victory, all the way through to 2003 when we qualified for the Super Sixes in that World Cup, my last World Cup in which I did the protest. But really, trouble, if you can call it that, really kicked off, and I'll try and be brief, when we first of all sacked our coach, David Houghton, who was recently part of the coaching setup again. We then started asking for more money, and then there was an incident in the change room, and people need to go and it's too long a story to try and cover here, but long story short, a once harmonious team became very fractured in the space of 1 or 2 years, and I was targeted as the instigator of a lot of that trouble, which I will deny. I think people, like I said, people like to hate on me. I don't know why, but
no, because vocal, it is what it is, yo. Like vocal, if you stand up for right, you end up becoming an enemy. Like, it is what it is.
I know, and it's a sad world. It's a sad world. And when the people who are trying to speak for fairness and justice and speak for the little guy, end up being the ones that are attacked. So most people have heard the saying, "Don't shoot the messenger," right? And it makes sense. Like, sometimes the person who's bringing them, you might not like their style, you might not like the way they look, you might not even like the way they speak, but if they've got a message and it's got truth, maybe it's worth listening to. Sorry, someone's got a message up there. I'd like to know what your thoughts on the state of Zim cricket today. Well, look, first of all, I still watch Zim cricket when they perform, when they play well. I'm obviously happy when they do well. I'm out of the game. I don't play cricket anymore. I might get back into cricket commentary at some point. Who knows? But you're unlikely to see me in the world of cricket per se. Of course, I don't know. To answer the second part of the question, I don't know what's going on now. From a political perspective, I don't know what the racial tensions are like in the team. As far as my view from the bunker, when I see them playing, they seem to be a harmonious team. They've got some good players. They've got Hassan Raza. He's a fine player. He plays around the world in various tournaments. Burl, he's a good player as well. They've got some good fast bowlers. A lot of the guys I played with and against have obviously moved on from the game. Taiboom, Matsika Nyeri, obviously Hamilton Masakadza, Elta Chigumbura. A lot of those guys I played with at Takashinga came and went, and they had decent careers. But they also had troubles. They had to rebuild from a team that had very little experience in 2004 onwards. And so there was trouble. There was trouble in Zimbabwe cricket for about a decade or so, where we tried to rebuild and try to get back on the international stage competitively. Obviously, we're still struggling because we didn't make the cut for this World Cup. It would have been so good if we'd beaten Scotland. I think they needed to beat Scotland to qualify, and they got edged out by the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. But long story short, I hope and wish that Zimbabwe cricket does well. I obviously am a patriotic Zimbabwean through and through till the day I die, because I played for the country. I played for my country. I represented Zimbabwe at the highest level. I wish them well. I want them to have good coaches, a good structure. I'd love for them to put some of the hard-earned money back into the sport. It would be nice to see Harare Sports Club looking more like a stadium. Maybe the fact that it's next to State House doesn't help, but man,
that's it.
Man, we've been playing at that cricket club for 30 years, and it still looks like it still looks like a club side. You know what I mean?
It.
I've been watching the World Cup cricket in India. Man, every stadium looks amazing.
Different, changed, modernized, old.
So I don't know. The Zimbabwe cricket's had millions of dollars plowed into it in the last 20, 30 years since I started. But we still have very little to show for it, as in infrastructure. I'm not talking victories. We've had enough success to encourage youngsters to get into the game, to make it a career, etc. But we just, the administration of the game, I still perceive as very old school. I still think people have very, very old attitudes to the way cricket should be run. They need some young blood in there. They need some business people. They need, I just think there's a missed opportunity there. Zimbabweans could galvanize against a team that could do extremely well, but they need to support them. The government needs to throw money into it. But of course, Zim is complex. There are other sports. The national sports, soccer, I suppose. Those sports also need support. And Zimbabwe is not it's not a wealthy country relatively. So I totally understand if Zimbabwe cricket struggles from time to time.
Right.
Because you need big companies to get behind the sport, to sponsor, pay for advertising, etc. Then the big money comes. Then all the other benefits come after that. But long story short, I still watch the game. I still wish them well. I hope they get managed well into the future. Zimbabwe cricket has too rich a heritage to lose to mismanagement in the coming years. So good luck to them.
And last but not least, our question that people may not know, following your beyond cricket life journey, going on to The Voice Australia. We didn't get into your music career, but what gave you the courage, or even just to say, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot, and being mentored by Kelly Rowland of all the people, having to choose Kelly, and what did that mean for you? Express your excitement. And I think I have put all the questions in one. The Voice.
Okay, right. Okay, so long story short, the reason I went on The Voice is because they asked me. They got in touch with me. So I'd been doing a bit of singing here in Australia. I did some singing in England.
Okay.
And I did a bit of singing in Australia, and I did this one particular concert at the Adelaide Town Hall, and I believe someone must have filmed it.
Okay.
And sent it in. And the talent scouts are always looking for interesting stories. I
Yeah.
think if you know anything about these talent shows, you gotta have a story. Like
Of
if you can sing full stop and you come from a nice middle class family, blah blah blah, that's all right. But they want the person who's got one leg and their father abandoned them when they were two, you know, and they want to kill themselves.
so hilarious. And if your kids don't think you're funny, sorry.
You know, so 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 they chose me because I guess I've got a story, you know.
Yeah.
And boy, do I have a story.
Sorry.
So so they wrote to me and they said, "Hey, you want to be on the show?" And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't really like those type of shows. You know, I've
Yeah.
never jived with reality TV.
Yeah.
Well, for whatever reason, for me, it just feels manufactured, contrived. It just
Mm,
doesn't come across as authentic. But
authentic.
I
Yeah.
thought, I thought, I thought. In fact, initially I thought it was the UK voice because the person who emailed me sent me an email from itv.com,
Mm,
which is a British television channel, and I thought, oh, that's weird. So I just because when I first moved to this country, I was getting a lot of that. I was getting a lot of people emailing me thinking I was still in the UK. So I
mm.
got back. I said, no, sorry, I'm actually in Australia. They said, no, this is Australia, the voice
Oh wow.
from Australia. So I said, okay, I'll think about it. I said initially, my first email was when she got back to me. I was like, it's not really my thing. That's honest truth. And then she pestered me, man. She got back to me. They said, like, you got a week left. We'd really like to have you. So I then spoke to my wife and my friends. I had some friends that I spoke to, and they said, man, you got to go for it. You got to go for it. So they pushed me over the line. So I was like, oh, okay. So you got to submit an application online. So I did that online thing, and then you wait because there's something like 100,000 people who want to be on the show. You know what I mean? So they've got to narrow that down to 5,000. So 5,000 after people have submitted, and then after that you go and do a proper audition in front of these industry bigwigs. So we had it at a little hotel here in Adelaide called the Mayfair Hotel. First of all, I was probably the only black dude in the house. And I was also the oldest fella there. Like everyone else looked like they were 16. I was like, what the heck am I doing here? So when you get through, they give you a piece of paper. So whoever walks out with a piece of paper, you know has gotten through. So I got through and I sung a few classical pieces because although I can sing anything, a lot of people in the West think it's kind of interesting that a black guy can sing classical music or opera. So I tend to sing a lot of that, and I sing a lot of stuff from musicals. So I sung a few songs from musicals and a bit of opera, and they were like, yeah, okay, yeah. You're through. So I was like, I am? They were like, yeah.
And they were shocked.
So I walked out with my white piece of paper, and all the other people were like, dang, what's he got?
How? Exactly.
But
Yeah.
they didn't know I got a story.
Yeah, that's
So-
it. The icing on the cake.
So then there's a number of subsequent steps. You then have to go to another round of like auditions, and then you can go on what's called the blind auditions, where you then sing in front of the chairs that are facing away from you. So our judges were Boy George, Delta Goodrem, who's an Australian pop singer, Kelly Rowland, and a guy called Guy Sebastian, who's like probably Australia's greatest singer, in a sense. But anyway, and Guy Sebastian's the guy I would have gone for, but he didn't turn. So I sung. By the way, I sung a song called "This Is the Moment." It's from Jekyll and Hyde. You can see it on YouTube. So you could probably put a link down. But if you Google Henry Olonga the voice, "This Is the Moment," you'll probably get that one.
Yeah.
So Guy Sebastian doesn't turn, and they before you go on the show, they ask you what order would you have your judges in. So I was going to go Guy Sebastian. If he doesn't turn, I'm going to go Kelly Rowland. If she doesn't turn, I'm going to go Delta Goodrem. Then I'm going to go Boy George. Now, of course, what happens is Delta Goodrem turns first, Boy George turns second, and then Kelly turns right at the end. And I was like, man, I grew up listening to Destiny's Child. There's no way.
I was just hoping you would bring that up. I was hoping.
There was no way I wasn't gonna go
That's
with
it.
Beyonce's sister. You know what I'm saying?
That-
And the other thing is, Kelly Rowland gave me quite an interesting pitch. She
oh,
was like, oh, she turned around. She was like, I turned around last, but it wasn't because I didn't like your voice, but it was like, but there's something there, and I reckon I can go all the way with you, brother. Something like it. Like I can take you far in this competition. Then she added my brother at the end, right? So I was like, my brother. I was like, you got me, girl. You got me. As soon as she said my brother, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm in. So,
Amen.
so I chose Kelly. In hindsight, what I didn't know is that Kelly had already promised a rapper called Denzel that she was taking him all the way through. So when we came together, she was always going to choose him, which she did. But it was an interesting experience. It wasn't flawless from my perspective. I kind of stuffed up in my second performance. I sung Can You Feel the Love Tonight? And I kind of fluffed my words. So I messed up my words. And I think Kelly lost confidence in me after that. Anyway, that was The Voice. So I got eliminated after the battles. And you know what? I kept singing. I ended up singing with the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra. I ended up singing with a lot of bands here in Adelaide. I've sung around the place. It opened some doors. And then that thing happened that shut down everything. What was it called again? You know that thing that happened that shut the whole world down for 2 years?
Yeah, 2020. That's what the.
Have you heard of it? Yeah. So that shut down every door that opened.
Oh
And
no!
I then found myself effectively unemployed after having a great 2019. 2020 was the year, man.
Yeah.
And then it all went to pot. And so I'm still rebuilding from
Right.
there.
Oh no! Everything happens for a reason. A lot of things changed. 2020. Lots of developments for other people, but then at the same
Yeah,
time,
you Canadians, man. That Mr. Trudeau.
what did our handsome Prime Minister do? Hey,
Listen, I'm not a fan. I'm sorry.
I
I'm
know,
not a fan.
everyone, everyone is tired.
You know I get nervous around dictators.
No, trust me, like everybody is getting tired. Like even right now, there's a new vaccine. Everybody's like, now we're done. Right? Like we're not doing it. We are definitely not doing it. So I get you. Don't worry.
Yeah. So right now it's just look, I'm hopeful. I've got a lot of interests at the moment. I'm getting back into athletics. I'm doing my
I
music.
saw your last one of your last posts.
Yeah, I'm doing javelin. I don't know where that'll lead. It's kind of fun. I'm an old man, but you never know. So I'm getting back into training. We'll see what happens next year.
Right.
So watch this space. I'll just keep posting stuff on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. If I have success, I'll post it there. But I'm also releasing a ton of music coming in the next, few months. I'm hoping to just be ridiculous. So I want to release a lot of music. So obviously, it's very helpful if people subscribe to my YouTube channel, because the way YouTube works, if you got over a certain number of views, you get monetized and all that, etc.
Sorry,
You're not a fan of JT. Is that a question? Is that a question or is that an observation?
Right. Well, he's Canadian.
I think he's being sarcastic there. He's not a fan either. That's how I'm gonna read that.
See how people always want to what do you call it? Say it the way they want to say it, or view it their own way.
No, I think I'm looking at the emojis there. The suggestion is he's shocked. He's not so shocked. He's laughing. So I'm going to take it that way.
It's like it's a shock.
Yeah.
Chaka
so there you go.
He's a good musician as well. He's a mbira player. He's based
Chaka Z. That's a great musician's name.
Right?
So there's lots going on, so watch this space, obviously I'm rubbish at promo. I know, like if people go to my Facebook, all they'll see is, hey, I'm doing a gig here, I'm doing a gig there, I did this, I did that. That's because I'm not one of those people who likes to share their life, man. I'm not like like the Kardashians, man, they've put me off that kind of like that oversharing thing. I'm doing this. Hey, I'm sitting at such and such a place and I'm eating look at my muffin. Look, isn't it lovely? It's gorgeous. I'm just not like that,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm not into that. So unfortunately,
Mm.
I'm not the most exciting social media type person. But I will, if ever there's something of interest that I think is interesting, I'll put it up there. So
Right.
it is helpful if people follow me. Of course, it's helpful if people subscribe to my channel, my YouTube channel, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, just because it just helps. The more numbers I have, the more chances that things can work for me. But it's not a hard sell. I'm just going to say, if you want to support a brother,
Right.
you want to support a brother,
Kelly would call you.
yeah.
Kelly called you a brother.
But even if people don't support me, I'm getting busy now. So I've got a decent studio here. I want to make music videos. I want to make short films. I want to there's just lots of things I want to do. There's not enough hours in a day, but I'm going to do artwork. I'm going to do paintings. Just it's a busy time. But at 47, you start. A few people start to die. So Heath Streak, like last year in Australia, we lost 3 cricket greats.
No.
We lost a guy called Shane Warne. We lost a guy called Rod Marsh, and we lost a guy called Simons. And you just start to realize how close you are. Within a couple of decades, I could be gone. I'm at that age. 5 years from now, if I don't take care of myself, I could get a heart attack.
That's it.
And so I'm basically trying to live my best life. I know it's so cliched, but if I'm going to do anything, it's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. So
right.
I'm stepping up and trying to, go hard.
And as we conclude, you mentioned about following you on all social platforms from Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, now X.
Yes, it's now X. I said Twitter as well.
Like
Twitter, that's right.
Also, where can we find your audiobook? If people are going to be looking for your audiobook, we can see that on your socials, but where best can they click so they can get
right. So I've got this thing called what's it called? Linktree, which is on my Twitter or my X. If you click on that, it brings up all the places you can get it. But just for those people who don't care for that, it's very easy. Whatever audiobook platform you use, I'm probably on there because I'm in 44 shops. So I'm definitely on Audible. I'm definitely on Spotify. I'm definitely on Google Play. Definitely on iTunes. There's another website called audiobooks.com. It's a long list. So if people are into audiobooks, they probably have their own favorite one. They can just type my name in. You don't have to type in the full name of the book. Just type Henry Olonga. I've only released one book.
Right.
So you can't get it wrong. And I should come up. Unfortunately, some Audible stores don't have my book. So, for example, the India Audible store doesn't have my book.
Oh, how come?
Because Audible decides where they'll put the books. And I emailed them and I was like, that's my biggest market, man. These Indians love me. They love me because I played cricket.
They know you.
So with that in mind, I don't know about other territories. There may be, if you live in Italy or you live in, I'm guessing it's in Canada, America, Australia, the UK, and most European stores. But I can't speak beyond that. And the other thing is, I get a little bit less money from some stores.
Oh no!
Like if you go to Scribd, which is this weird thing, I get like $1. Whereas if you go to Google Play, I get like 20, 25. I get half of $25, something like that. Anyway, so the best place is if you're, and the other thing is if you're a subscriber to Spotify, a premium subscriber, you get 15 hours free for audiobooks in a month. You
Oh
can
no.
get it for, yeah, you get it. You can just get it that way.
Okay.
It's in your subscription anyway, so you're not going to miss out on anything. You
Right.
don't have to pay extra. Otherwise, I think it's $25 in
Okay.
those stores. Do I have a paper copy of the audiobook? I do, but I let me rephrase. I did print one years ago, but it's out of print now. You
Okay.
can probably still find copies online on eBay, etc. But I don't know if you can find. It's easy to find. It's kind of almost out of print. But the other thing is the audiobook is an expanded version of my initial book.
Oh, nice.
So in the audiobook, I talk about I talk a lot more about I flesh things out a little bit because the paperback was 100,000 words. The audiobook is maybe just under double that.
Okay.
So I because as I told my story, because I tell my story quite a bit as a public speaker, I realized that in my public speaking, I tell the stories in an interesting way that I didn't capture in the book. So I've revisited a lot of those stories and retold them from the perspective of how I tell them now, and they're much more interesting. So the audiobook has got a lot more interesting bits in it than the paperback. So if you buy the paperback, and we release a hardback as well, you'll get the story, but you'll get a lot of typos, a few mistakes here and there, and you don't get the extra stories that I've thrown in.
No, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Olonga, for hanging out with us. It was really a pleasure and an honor. And I knew it was going to be a long one because I'm like, okay, how am I going to divide this? There's, the early life, there's the cricket life, there's the political life, as in the political side of things, in your journey and, eventually life after cricket. And, we managed to touch on all of that in as much as it's not so much. But people can go and get more of everything else about Henry Olonga in his audiobook that he said it now has more information or more details or more of his story. The book is entitled Blood, Sweat, and Treason. So thank you so much, Mr. Olonga. It was really a pleasure.
My pleasure. No, it's my pleasure. And I knew, your producer, I think is it Andy? Yeah. He said we normally take half an hour to an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way it's going to be half an hour.
When people are asking me how long is it going to take, I was like, we try and make it 30, but the longest would be an hour. But this is Henry Olonga. So this is me. That was like, I knew we were going to get at least an extra 30 minutes.
Well, I mean, look, it took me almost 500 hours to edit the audiobook.
Oh, wow.
And it's 17 hours. So there's no ways I can scratch the surface deeper than just the surface in 30 minutes. So I always understood it was going to be a long one. But listen, it's my pleasure. Good luck to you in all your challenges and trials and everything that you're doing. I wish After 5 Radio all the best and more success to you. And
thanks
for having me.
We're going to be playing your music. Since you said you're going hardcore music, definitely please do send it through once you have your album, or if they come out as singles, EPs. We would it would be an honor and a pleasure to play it here on After 5 Radio.
Fantastic. I'll do that.
Awesome. And to everybody else who was watching, Bruce, Nkanyiso, Chaka, Antis Piwe, Thomas, Nash, a lot of people, guys. If I missed your name, I am so sorry. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. And I hope this interview was worthwhile. And if, we didn't get into a lot of things, please do get Henry's book on all audiobook streaming platforms or musical platforms, really, like Spotify and Apple and all that fun stuff. And also get to see Henry Olonga on YouTube performing, some of the songs that he was talking about on The Voice. It will be, it'll give you an idea if you didn't know that side of Henry, if you just knew our Zimbabwe side of Henry, singing. But yeah, there's a whole lot more. But anyway, this is us saying goodbye. Take care. God bless you. And I love you guys.